Arknights is the best gacha game of 2022. I know there are going to be some of you that disagree, and you're more than welcome to disagree with that. Arknights, however, for me, has provided me a casual, friendly experience while also offering one of the most challenging storylines, some of the most engaging story, and overall some of the most thrilling gameplay out of any gacha that I've played this year. For those of you that aren't aware, Arknights is a strategy tower defense style anime RPG. It doesn't have an open world, it doesn't have action combat, it's not a game like Genshin Impact or Honkai Impact or Punishing Grey Raven or Blue Archive. It's a game where you place down your husbandos and waifus and hope to God that they are equipped enough to prevent you from being absolutely overrun and subsequently losing the round. Now, I have chosen to do this entirely unscripted. I had this massive script that I was thinking of writing up and doing in my head, but I thought to myself, it is December 29th. I do not think that I could compress all of that information into an easily digestible video. And honestly, given that I wanted to release this video before the end of the year, I think it might be better for me to just talk about each individual topic, each aspect that I really enjoy about the game and that I don't enjoy about the game, and see how we go from there. Before we go ahead and jump into this video though, I do want to take a moment here to thank all of our incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys are true SSR quality husbandos and waifus, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for the support. Also, if you guys are bored, come and follow both Mrs. Stix and I over on Twitter. So, I've been playing Arknights since the beginning of this year. At the beginning of this year, this channel didn't exist. I thought to myself, gacha games are growing in popularity. Gacha games have gotten significantly higher quality since when I first tried them out a couple years ago. I started off with Genshin Impact, I moved to Arknights and a few others, but Arknights really caught my attention. And that is because Arknights rewards you for being a casual player. You do not need to pour 3, 4, 5 hours into the game to remain competitive. I can play this game for 5 minutes a day, drain through my stamina, and not fall behind in any capacity. Or I can play this game for an hour, for 2 hours, and still fail to clear content that I've been failing to clear for months now. So every morning I wake up, I boot Arknights up, I'm at the sanity cap, I go through, I make sure to run through all of the dailies that you need to do. I make sure to visit my friends. I go ahead and attempt to, if I have them, send out my clues. I make sure to pull for new husbandos and waifus. I make sure to clear the missions that are available, and then I begin to start farming for XP tickets. I go and farm for currency. I think I'm at like 1.7 million at present. Then I go and, if there is an event going on, attempt to continue with the event. Arknights, they really do push out events like no other. Each individual event has a ton of story connected to it. Each event brings new characters. It alters old characters that have been obsolete for months, for years, and turns them into something completely different, reinvigorating the character. And honestly, this is something that I don't really see done very often, if at all, in other gacha games. Admittedly, the husbandos and waifus, while I feel like the rates aren't terrible in Arknights, I feel like I have obtained so many characters with very minimal investment. Overall, I've probably spent about $600 on Arknights over the course of the entirety of 2022. And I mean, that's kind of tax deductible because I can write that off as an expense because it is directly used as content for this channel. So I mean, that's a net positive for me. But overall, I feel like I haven't spent that much on Arknights. I think in 2 months in Genshin Impact, maybe 3, I spent roughly $1,500 to obtain Eula, to obtain Zhongli, to obtain Shenhe. These are characters that I just thought looked absolutely incredible, and I had to obtain them. So in Arknights, I feel as though I've gotten every character that looked interesting to me without really investing much money into it. The money that I poured into this game has pretty much been used exclusively to continue to grind XP, to continue to grind currency, so I can actually level up and promote and evolve my characters. All of the roles that I do for my husbandos and waifus, I've actually done by building up and retaining all of the currency I earn in-game for free. So I feel like at the end of the day, I've had decent luck. I got Silver Ash, I got Surtur, I got Ifrit, I got so many incredible characters. Now I've only upgraded them all like once or twice because I've only ever been lucky enough to get them once, and then grinding out the materials to actually promote them is a very arduous process. It not only takes a long time, but also is very expensive. But you look at the characters, you look at how effective they are and how strongly they influence the flow of every battle, and it kind of makes them worth it. And that is disregarding how good all of the husbandos and waifus look in this game. Seriously, there are a lot of great gacha out there. There are a lot of gacha with really great character models like Azure Lane, like Blue Archive, like even Genshin Impact, Honkai Impact, Punishing Grey Raven. But man, the character models in this game they're not, I feel like, as provocative or as explicit in Arknights as they are in something like Azure Lane, or maybe even in Blue Archive, which admittedly now has like a 17+ rating in Korea, and definitely not like Nikkei, like far from Nikkei. But the character models in this game and the outfits that you can get for them, which I do not purchase and I do not spend money on, provide you this insatiable need to roll for them. And I know you guys can relate, and I know you understand exactly what I'm talking about. I know plenty of people that play Arknights that roll for the characters, and instead of rolling for new characters, they instead opt to purchase the outfits for the husbandos and waifus that they have fell in love with. And I completely understand that, because like looking at characters like Surtur, like, or even Silver Ash, and you're like, man. And then more than that, the fact that so many characters have such unique play styles, unique abilities, unique beneficial advantages to having them in your group, and that they still continue to push out characters that leave you needing to actually acquire them. Like, for those of you that have Silver Ash as an example, there's no contesting. He has one of the greatest abilities in the game. He can mow down an absolute field of enemies in absolute seconds. Surtur is an absolute gargantuan massacring machine. You can pop her ability, she gains immortality and just deals an exorbitant amount of damage to all enemies that are within her radius. Saria, Ifrit, even someone like Kalstit, dude, there are just so many characters in this game that are just absolutely exceptional. Characters that continue to leave me wanting to actually invest my currency into obtaining. They look unique, they look incredible, and their utility in-game is something that I just haven't really found in other games. Like, I played a lot of Punishing Grey Raven, I played a lot of Genshin Impact. In Genshin Impact, I love, like, I don't know, Raiden Shogun, I love Eula, I love Shenhe, I love a variety of different characters, but while they are all unique and all have their own semi-unique fighting styles, they still don't have the same kind of utility that provides as large a beneficial advantage as characters do in Arknights. We have characters that can literally summon monsters on the field, that can merge monsters after summoning them, turning them into more powerful versions of that summon. We have characters that have the ability to cover like 10, 13, 14 squares out, like wandering medics. We have healers like Kyle said, who can create a summon whilst being a healer, and that summon is as powerful a tank as any other that you have at your disposal. You have a character like Ifrit who can mow down an entire lane of enemies and is arguably one of the most powerful casters in the game. You have AoEers, you have tanks that can heal, you have tanks that can tank, you have DPS that can just fill all these different roles, you have people that can slow, people that can incapacitate, people that can like the limits that they have imposed in this game are almost non-existent, which leaves you with this unusual type of combat that always feels new, that always feels refreshing, and that is disregarding their additional types of game modes, their additional types of mechanics that they continue to introduce every time they introduce a new event. I think the last like 5 events featured 3 different mechanics in total, and I have had a lot of trouble with some of them. I've used Echo Gen for some of the levels because I just cannot do them on my own because I have bad team compositions, or I don't have my teams upgraded correctly. Maybe I just don't understand how things work in unison and it's inhibiting my progress. But this game is just, it provides an absolutely intense difficulty that I have not found in any other game in the gacha genre to date, and provides you an almost infinite amount of ways of tackling everything due to the sheer number of characters that are available in the game. There's no clearly defined way of successfully completing or achieving something. You can use any combination of DPS, of casters, of melee, of healers, which means that every team composition has a purpose and every character has a use. Now, I know a lot of people on Reddit anyway, when discussing Arknights, have expressed that Arknights' story is kind of bloated and unnecessarily stretched out, elongated, and admittedly that is true. And I feel like this isn't something that's necessarily specific to Arknights. Genshin Impact also has this issue. A lot of gacha games really have an issue where the story is just stretched out endlessly for no reason. They could compress, they could condense the story by 50%, by 75%, and they could still get across everything they wanted to without making it feel bloated. Again, not specifically pertaining to Arknights, I'm talking about gacha games in general. Arknights, I feel, isn't terrible when it comes to bloated story. There are a lot of instances where I do skip some of what they're saying because I do believe that they're kind of repeating things that you already know, or the conversations that are being had are just entirely unnecessary. But largely, I believe Arknight's story, its narrative, to be told fairly well. I wouldn't say it's necessarily on par with, I don't know, the storytelling in like Nikke or maybe in Path to Nowhere. Not because I feel like the story in Arknights is inferior to either of those games, but I feel like both of those games tell it at a more moderate pace. And honestly, like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just gonna say this right here. I love voice acting in my games, so hearing both Nikke and Path to Nowhere and even Genshin Impact be completely voice acted just provides additional layers of depth and allows for you to become engaged and enthralled and captivated in what's being said and what is actually going on. That's an issue I have with Punishing Grey Raven as well. Punishing Grey Raven has a fantastic story, just like Arknights has, but I feel like I'm a little more disconnected from the narrative overall, and I'm not as engaged in what's going on necessarily when the characters aren't speaking to me. I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way. More than the story though, I also like how interconnected all of the characters are. How each character seems to know various other characters in your group, how you find out these characters know each other as new events are held, how some of them have really messed up histories, really messed up backstories, current stories that are unfolding, current stories that are continuing to evolve over time, stories that are being touched upon, even if being touched upon on the side in events, like Lava during her event, like Hibiscus in the current event, seeing characters that are old, that are kind of irrelevant, be brought to center stage and becoming a main focus. And not just that, getting updated models, having entirely new upgraded units. I don't know. I feel like this is just something that is really rarely done. Typically, gacha games are like, here's your base set of heroes at the beginning of the game, and they're characters that they're a part of the story, but they're characters that are never touched ever again. They don't receive updates, they don't receive upgrades. Maybe rebalancing, sure, but Arknights just, they prevent you, or they prevent characters from becoming entirely irrelevant. And that's something that other games could definitely learn from. Now, as I noted at the beginning of this video, one of the key aspects I really enjoy about Arknights is the fact that I can tackle this game completely casually. For the last 2 weeks or so, I've logged in for maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day to play it, because I've been recording other gacha games to do dedicated videos on for the channel. Now, this is not something I can do in other games. I can't just log in for 5 minutes in Genshin Impact because the dailies alone literally take me like 30 minutes to achieve. So being able to have Arknights as a main game, but never be forced into playing it more or beyond what I want to devote to it at that moment, is refreshing. Now, there are events that are going on, and if you don't successfully complete those events in that set period of time, you'll lose out on the option of obtaining items, materials, potentially other characters, but typically those events either are featured in reruns or you can continue to do them after they've ended. You just won't get the rewards from them. And being able to do all of these events at any time provide you just exponentially more content to do than you've really got the time to do. Because I'm still clearing all of the side content. I'm still clearing the main story, or actually no, I've actually completed the main story with the exception of a few final boss fights, and all of the challenge mode versions of those fights as well. It has provided me endless joy, failing repeatedly to kill all of these bosses, to finish these levels with difficulty that I have never experienced before, with hundreds of monsters just swarming me. Again, the difficulty of this game is something that I appreciate tremendously, and is something that I cannot stress enough is probably one of the most enjoyable and at the same time frustrating aspects of it. I feel like I could talk about this game endlessly. There's so much about it that I love, so much about it that keeps me playing. But if you're looking for reasons to play this game, then I just listed like 10 off the top of my head. 10 reasons that keep me logging in every day. I have not missed a day all year. If you've listened to what I've said and you're like, no, that doesn't sound like the kind of game I'm interested in, then that's fine. Strategy games aren't your thing. But they are mine. I grew up with games like Final Fantasy Tactics, like Tactics Ogre, like Fire Emblem, a lot of the older Fire Emblems actually. So playing a strategy game of this quality with updates at such regular intervals, with such quality storytelling, with fantastic gameplay, like this is a game that I could not argue enough is one of the best gacha games. By its definition, is easily one of the greatest games probably released in the year it was released, and has absolutely no competition in the strategy genre whatsoever. This is the uncontested king of strategy games. While there are other great strategy games out there and other upcoming strategy games that might be contenders for the title, I highly doubt they're ever going to provide us the same thrill that we get from this game. Arknights is the best gacha game of 2022. It is hands down. But if you're looking for something that isn't a strategy game, no problem. I got you covered with what is on screen right now. I got 2 different videos. One features what I believe are the genre-defining gacha games, the best that the genre has to offer. The other is a brand new upcoming gacha game that you need to be actively aware is coming, because this game might take the place of the greatest gacha release of 2023.